Imagine this. Someone who has been part of your world for as long as you can remember suddenly becomes fragile in a way you never imagined possible. This is the person who knows every quirk you hide, every joy you celebrate, every fear you'd rather swallow than speak. The one who finishes your sentences, notices the slight change in your tone, and always reaches for your hand first. When the foundation of that bond begins to tremble, the entire world seems to lose its shape. That was the moment everything changed for Kelly. Her life, usually full of jokes, routines, and comfort of predictability, took a turn she never saw coming. Her husband, Mark, had been feeling unwell for a while, but nobody expected the situation to escalate the way it did. One moment they were discussing dinner plans, and the next she found herself rushing behind a rolling bed as staff guided him into a quiet, heavily monitored section of the hospital. The hallway lights felt too bright, the air too cold, the silence too unnatural. The soft murmur of medical equipment replaced the laughter that normally filled their home. Kelly had always been the one who could find humor in anything, but in that moment, even her own voice felt unreachable. She just kept walking behind the stretcher, gripping the strap of her bag like a lifeline, thinking, how did we get here so fast? Hours blurred into each other. The world shrank to a single room with glass doors, low voices, and constant waiting. The kind of waiting that reshapes you. Then came the moment she would never forget. Even though he was exhausted and struggling to speak more than a few words at a time, Mark insisted on seeing their children. It wasn't a dramatic request. It wasn't even loud. It was just a quiet, steady plea. A father who realized he needed to say something important while he still had the strength to say it. Kelly hesitated. She wanted to protect the kids, shield them from fear, keep their world intact. But he looked at her with such clarity that she knew what she had to do. When the children entered the room, they walked slowly, unsure of what to expect. Kelly stood against the wall, holding on to the armrest of a chair. Mark reached for each one of them, not with loud declarations, but with soft reminders of everything he believed in. To his eldest, he spoke about responsibility, not as a burden, but as a guiding light. To his middle child, he talked about generosity, telling them that kindness can be its own form of strength. To his youngest, he whispered about joy, reminding them that laughter was not something to save for later, but something to carry always. Kelly watched it all with her heart breaking open. The expressions on the children's faces, the way Mark fought to make each word count, none of it felt real. It felt like watching life through a window, as if she were outside herself. Then came the sentence she would replay in her mind forever. If tomorrow is too hard for me to speak, promise you'll tell them I love them anyway. After the kids left, Kelly sat beside him and gripped his hand with both of hers. She didn't know what to say, so she stayed silent. Sometimes silence is the only truth that fits. But as the night dripped into morning, something in the air shifted. Slowly, day by day, tiny changes began to appear. A little more strength in his voice, a little more color returning to his face, a little more steadiness in his breathing. The doctors noticed it first, Kelly noticed it second, and then came the sound she had been waiting for, the faintest hint of a laugh. Soft, tired, imperfect, but undeniably his. It was the sound that broke her open in the best way. Mark wasn't himself yet, not fully, but he was finding his way back. When he sat up on his own for the first time, it was like watching someone climb out of a deep fog. When he stood, the entire hallway seemed to hold its breath, cheering him on without saying a word. As family and friends gathered around him in those early days, Kelly finally allowed herself to feel hope again. Not the kind of hope that hides fear, but the kind that grows stronger because of it. The morning he was discharged felt like stepping into sunlight after weeks of twilight. Kelly rolled him outside, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was bracing for impact. She felt like she was moving forward. The world looked different, sharper, richer, more vibrant. Even the ordinary things shone. The color of the sky, the warmth of her son's hand on Mark's shoulder, the sound of a car door closing as they started their journey home. Once home, the adjustment was real. Everything was quieter, slower, and far more delicate. The routines that used to happen without thought now required patience. The children tiptoed more than they walked. Kelly found herself listening for every small sound, learning the rhythm of their new life. The recovery wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, and it demanded a kind of strength that didn't come from bold actions, but from endurance. There were days when frustration outweighed progress, days when Mark felt like a shadow of the person he used to be, days when Kelly had to remind herself that exhaustion didn't mean weakness. But one thing held firm: their commitment to each other. The world around them still expected them to smile, to entertain, to be the bright, familiar faces people tuned into every morning. And eventually they returned to their work. But it was different now. Everything was. The stage that had once been just another workplace became something deeper, a reminder of everything they had survived. Their on-air interactions weren't just playful anymore. They held a quiet gratitude beneath the laughter. The audience sensed it instantly. Their bond felt less like television and more like witnessing two people who understood the fragility of each moment. When Mark joined Kelly as her on-air partner permanently, their story became not just entertainment but inspiration. They didn't tell every detail. They didn't need to. Their presence together said enough. They turned their experience into something meaningful, not by dramatizing it, but by being honest about the simple truth. Life can shift in an instant, and sometimes the only thing that keeps you steady is love. At home, they created new traditions. Each evening, no matter how busy or tired, they gathered for 1 hour. Phones off, cameras away, just them, their family, their stories, their laughter. They stopped waiting for later. Later had already proved it could disappear, and so they embraced now. In sharing their journey, not as celebrities but as people, they helped others realize that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the doorway to connection, and that behind every bright screen or public persona, there's a human story that matters more than anything else. For Kelly and Mark, it was never about the spotlight. It was about surviving together, growing together, rediscovering life together. And in that rediscovery, something beautiful happened. They found that the moments that matter most are often the quietest ones. A hand held tightly, a shared smile, a whispered reminder that I'm still here. Their journey wasn't easy, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. And it brought them back to what they had almost lost, their sense of home in each other.